Hi, welcome to Introduction to Managing Multiple iOS Devices. My name is John Couzins. I'm going to be giving this presentation. I am the lead network technician for Beaumont College in Lancaster. The reason that I've started looking into this is I was given the task a couple of months ago of starting to look at how we would be managing iOS devices within the college. At that point, we had a single device connected up to an iTunes account, and we just started introducing iPads and iPod touches into the environment, and we're finding that it had gotten to the point that it was getting very hard to manage, certainly between bringing every time they all link back to the same accounts, distributing apps. So I started looking into this, and it was around the time that Apple brought out the new volume licensing program, which I'll go into today. Some background on the college. We're Beaumont College. We're a specialist college operating in the FE sector. We're part of the charity Scope, the National Disability Charity. We cater for students with cerebral palsy and other disabilities and learning difficulties. There's some other information on Beaumont on the screen. Currently got 91 learners, which is a fair size for a specialist college. And we have around 430 staff, although around 330 of them are full-time. Licensing. So traditionally, this was the biggest problem with Apple. There was no really good way to manage or buy multiple applications. The way that you could have it was you had a device that was hooked up to to a machine, logged into an iTunes account, and you were able to push those apps out. If you actually look at Apple's terms and agreements, it is 5 personal devices, so 5 different individuals on paper cannot share the same iTunes account and legally use the application. So the way that you got around it was, if we had sort of 5 or 6 applications that we purchased, was to use the gifting system, and this was the way that Apple actually suggested was the way around this. As in, if you had one iTunes account, user X, that account would have your iTunes account, and that would be connected up to your credit card, but you would be able to purchase apps from that account and gift them to another email account that you didn't use on iTunes. So then you were purchasing the apps. You weren't using those specific apps, but you were showing. That way you could go back and show this. We have bought 20 versions of this. Here's all the gift vouchers for them, even though you'd still be pushing them out from the one original account. The new volume purchase program that Apple have introduced allows single apps to be purchased multiple times. So you actually be able to specify as you on the volume purchase program site how many instances of a particular application you want. So that could be as many as you want. They do offer some discounts. Developers who have enrolled into it, certainly Apple offer discounts on such products as GarageBand. GarageBand, there's I think 20 is around the magic number, where around 20, some products or some applications then go down to half price, and you use redemption codes rather than purchasing them through iTunes. You purchase an app, then you get sent a redemption code, and then you bring down the app. But I'll go into that a little bit more. Here's some of the links that will be quite useful for anyone wishing to enter the volume purchase program. The first link up here is the main information about it, and that'll give you all the information and all the links that you need from that. You need to we're a college. There's certain criteria that you need to sort of check before you can actually go into this and be a part of this. Education establishments, any educational establishment, I think should be fine to qualify for it. You'll need to go through a process where you sign up, they send them some information, they check back, and then they authorize you. Next thing. So Apple Configurator. Apple Configurator is the product that we've chosen to use for managing our Apple devices. this by no stretch is the best product for everyone. Anyone who's looking at deploying multiple iOS devices, as in 50 plus, I'd say this is not a scalable resource for you to use. It's very good for what we need to use. We're still looking at in college at certainly less than 20 iOS devices, and we use an Apple Configurator to manage those. Apple Configurator allows you to configure profiles, which I'll go into in a minute, deploy applications, both paid, enterprise, and free. Manage users and groups through that, so you can give specific users specific profiles, so you can link them into different apps and such like that. To quickly go through some of the functionality of the profile setting on here. The first screen, what you can set is I should go into this more really. You can connect the device up and prepare the device. You prepare it with a profile. The profile is a set of credentials. From those coming into this from the Windows world, you can think about it sort of like hard-coded group policies that can allow or disallow certain actions being performed on the iOS device. What can be set at here is in the general option on the, just as you can see down here, general, which is a mandatory field. You can put in things like your organization, your description, if users are allowed to delete the profile from being on there, because you're able to see the name of the profile that's on there. In restrictions, in passcode here, you're able to set things like the same as sort of password policies and coming from a Windows standpoint. So complexity of codes, the amount of times that it has before it'll lock you out, the number of failed attempts, things like that along them lines, setting up the security on the device. In restrictions, this has got a couple of tiers in restrictions. The functionality tab, which is actually shown here, you can basically go through and click some of these. You can disable FaceTime, allow bookstore, disallow any iCloud backups, things like that. You can either turn them off or on. In applications, the tab that's next to it, it's got settings for YouTube, Safari, iTunes, and in media content, you can go in and you can establish what content is appropriate for the device. So if you're coming at that from an educational setting, you could say only allow content that is under 12 or whatever rating that is given in iTunes. Global HTTP proxy, that is where you can hard-code global HTTP proxies if your organization supports them or offers them, so that all communication will go through these proxies regardless if they're out and about. That might be the case for logging, authentication, or anything like that. VPN, some of these, actually I've jumped one, some of these settings I won't go into too much because they're fairly obvious, and you could just find most of this stuff out with a quick Google. Wi-Fi is quite a useful one. Wi-Fi lets you set Wi-Fi information hard-coded into the device, so they're pre-populated. So if you had a network with a long WPA key or anything like that, you can pre-populate this all into the devices, so you're not having to type out long WPA keys or anything like that. And you can also set internal proxies in here. So if you're like under a certain setting, you could say connect to the campus wireless, then under that set your proxy server ports and credentials should you wish so in that. Jumping down some of these, VPN, it's fairly obvious. Your VPN settings, your mail settings, you're able to hard code mail settings in there, same as ActiveSync. LDAP as well. LDAP allows you to put your Windows credentials in there for single sign-on purpose, although this would obviously need support in applications or applications that are installed on the device that would take that information. The calendar features allows you to connect it up to a CalDev server, which is, again, if your organization supports it or not. Content setting is for CardDev. Contacts is actually connected to CardDev servers. subscribe calendars. Web clips allows you to publish a sort of a website that appears as an icon. So what you could do is, and you can set pictures and icons and like your own icons for that. So what you might want to do is publish a link to your intranet, put a picture of your organization or a picture that's relevant to your organization on there, and that will link straight through to your to your intranet on that will full screen and look like an application. And then all the web backends, you just do everything that's in there to allow that to look for it. Before I get to the end of profiles, I just want to say that we did start to look into Profile Manager, which is in OS X Server. Profile Manager offers the same sort of functionality that you're allowed to have, that you can push out profiles and have users and everything like that, but manages it over the air. The only problem with this is that it doesn't support applications. You're not able to push applications out other than enterprise applications, which are obviously developed within your enterprise. It doesn't even allow you to push out free applications using that. So we found that as a bit of a barrier and chose not to go down that road. Also, I came into a lot of problems where the way that Profile Manager works is that you connect to the server. So you put in the server IP address, it prompts you, you log on, then you enroll the device. I found that enrollment didn't always work for whatever reasons, and I saw a couple of other things around forums that sort of suggested that I wasn't the only person who was having this problem. That was certainly the case when I looked at it. I'm not sure whether that's been fixed now. But Profile Manager, as I say, the only issues was that it was perfect for everything else, but the inability to push out applications really made it sort of not even worth sort of venturing down for that reason. Applications. What I might just jump back into is I think that I've gone over some stuff about the licensing project, about the licensing process that might be useful. The licensing process that you will go through to get this is you will sign up to the enrollment page on the Apple website. If I jump back a couple of slides here. Okay. And there is a couple of different accounts that you're going to have to create. You will have a program manager account. This is the account that sets up the initial enrollment into the program. So your program manager account is an admin account of everything. You have one I think you might be able to have multiple program managers accounts, but I can't see an instance on where you'd want to do that. But program managers set up program facilitators accounts. Program facilitators accounts are going to be the accounts that are used for people who are going to purchase applications. So you can't purchase applications from the volume licensing with the program manager account. They have to come from the program facilitator account. These have all got to be unique Apple IDs, and they're all set up and handed out from the program manager account. What else can I say about the program, the facilitators account? The facilitators account will purchase the applications. They will then receive the redemption codes from them, and they will be used then however you choose to distribute your applications. The program facilitators will have the redemption codes for these devices, for these applications, should I say. Program facilitators accounts really should mimic how your organization works, I'd say. Within our environment currently, it only makes sense for us to have one program facilitator account that purchases the apps. Depending on the size of your organization, these could be scaled, because obviously the licensing model will be the same, the volume purchase license will be the same regardless of what solution you're using to deploy it. So this needs to be as scalable or make as much sense to your organization as necessary, really. So a program facilitator, for example, depending on your organization, you could have one program facilitator in your science department, one in your geography department, one in languages. You might have one per campus, you might have one per building. It just whatever best suits your place that you're deploying this in. As I say, we only use one, and that one person looks after purchases all the apps, that then they can keep a track of that and then they put the redemption codes into Apple Configurator. I think I've made a bit of sense of that. If not, as I say, I'll put my email on this, so you can contact me with any questions. So I'll jump back to where I should have been, and that's deploying apps. So deploying apps here is just a quick slide from Apple Configurator. So this is the process that you'd go through using Apple Configurator to push an app out. From Apple Configurator, you can deploy free apps, enterprise apps, and paid apps. Free apps aren't a problem. You can just import them into Apple Configurator. You just navigate to the mobile application folder, I think it is, on your iTunes server, and then just import that. They will go out without a problem, and the same is relevant with enterprise apps. They get deployed very similar to enterprise apps. Paid apps, this is where it gets a little more tricky. Not tricky, should I say, but just different. The educational store, so we've got a link here from the education store, so we can purchase a number of apps. Then I'll get an email sent to the program facilitator who purchased them apps with redemption codes. Then what I'll need to do is actually go onto iTunes, and this is something that it doesn't seem to be documented anywhere, but you need another iTunes account. Another account that isn't a program facilitator and isn't your program manager, that's just linked to iTunes. It can be any standard account, not linked to any credit card details or anything, just a standard account. This is used to download the applications using the redemption codes. So you'll go on, you'll purchase an app, but you use a redemption code. The redemption code will have the number of licenses on and will take off that license. We'll take off one license as you're downloading it, but that will then be placed back in when you re-import them into Apple Configurator. When it goes back into, so then you go into Apple Configurator, add the application's then added, then you then go to redemption code, put your redemption code in there, and that will give you the amount of application, the amount of licenses that you have for that specific item. Then as you prepare the devices and push them out to devices, it then subtracts the number of licenses that you've pushed out, so it's accounting for it. If you then bring that device back in and uninstall the application through Apple Configurator, it will then add your license total back up. At this point, we're still fairly new using this. We're unsure about what happens if you uninstall the application from the device at this point, whether you lose that license, which is then where you'd go into your profile and stop users from like the ability to uninstall the devices or not. But that's how you'd manage that. So it sort of keeps a track of itself, but you really have to sort of have a knowledge of what applications you've got. Where is Apple Configurator best used? Well, the reason that we're using it is because we're a relatively small deployment of iOS devices currently, and they're infrequently changing devices. To be able to bring all the, because this is a cabled solution, so you need to bring the device back, plug it in, cable it, sync it up. It doesn't take that long at all, depending on how many applications you're installing. If you're installing big applications such as GarageBand or some of the larger games like FIFA or anything like that, then it will take as long as it takes to copy across the wire. So I mean, FIFA is probably around 1 and a bit gig. So moving that across and installing it is going to take longer than a really small music application, so to speak. This application does not scale very well in terms of managing these devices. So anything more than 50, I'd say you'd start to get to the point that you're going to really struggle bringing all devices back in, being able to manage all the applications depending on what you've got. Again, we've got a complex app deployments. If you wanting to pull apps back and push them back out, depending on the types of sessions that you've got, this will not do what you want it to do. What you're going to need to look for then is one of the bigger solutions, which I'll briefly cover at the end, because I say we've not chosen that. So by far I'm the best person to talk about it. But I'll give you some examples about software that is actually out there. Apple, the feeling I get from Apple Configurator is Apple have offered a piece of software that can do this on a best effort. It's not designed for that. Apple are probably quite happy, and I'm speaking for Apple here, but they're probably quite happy letting third parties manage this. That's the feeling I get. It's like even home users can use it, so it's sort of possibly for someone who's got multiple iOS devices at home, whoever that might be, for them to be able to manage these devices. But the granularity in it sort of says otherwise. Whether you'd want to be able to hand it out and say, I need at home to be able to disallow people on Facebook or using FaceTime or anything like that is another question. How we've got this in college. So this goes for other any BYOD problems that anyone's coming across. The way that we've managed it is that on our main firewall switch, we've pushed out that manages our wireless infrastructure. We use VAPs, virtual access points, so we're able to cover the college with single access points, much the same as anything else, and then use virtual beacons that on top of that other users connect to, and they're separated using VLANs, so all across although across the same cable and using the same point, all the traffic segmented. So the way that we've done this in college is we've got the main college network, which is what college laptops connect to. They've got access to server shares, all the infrastructure, the same as desktops. We've got a guest network. Our guest network is a network that we can click on a button. It spits out a username and password for, say, a day. Those users go out through a separate internet endpoint that isn't connected to the college network, that guest users are able to come in and connect their devices up to and use things like RDP, should they need to do anything, Telnet, all the other services that you wouldn't typically not let your normal users, protocols that you wouldn't normally let your normal users go out through. What we've created after this is a tablet network. The tablet network is kind of a hybrid of the two, although not entirely. The hybrid network is, again, a virtual access point with an SSID that we can hard code into iOS devices using the profile manager, so it automatically connected to these devices. I can also pre-populate the proxy settings in this so that our proxy server is filled out from here. This network cannot get access to any of the servers or any of the workstations through our firewall. It can go out through, you can see some of the ports here, port 80, 443, standard web ports, and also some of them other ones that are listed there. They are FaceTime, iMessage ports, because they don't operate over standard web ports. The only network that anything on the tablet network can actually get to is our internet zone. So the internet zone forces them out through our proxy server that we use to authenticate all college machines, which is an integrated solution. So what we're able to do then is we're able to put in the users that are using the devices Active Directory credentials into this. Then they're able to authenticate using the proxy and then go out onto the internet. This means that we're able to log and monitor all of our student activity, which is what we're required of because we're on the Janet connection. So to the point that we're able to say this student was on, even though they're using the iOS devices, was on this website between 3:30 and 3:40. So that gives us that granularity to do that. At this time, there's no ability or no need really for students to be connected to the college network. Whether this evolves in time, I'm not 100% sure, but that's sort of to evaluate further down the road. I'm just going to quickly go through this. This is for the larger solutions, which are called MDM solutions. MVM solutions are very, very scalable depending on which one you get. There's some instances here. Tarmac, Symantec have got one. Lightspeed have also got one. These will let you distribute apps over the air and also let you pull apps back over the air. So you can put all of your applications into a central repository and then push out applications back and forth depending on the need of your organization. So that's something that is definitely worth looking at if your environment requires sort of more than a 50 iOS devices. Some of them are quite expensive, and some of them are based on a user model. So you have 50 devices, you pay for 50. I can't think of anything else. I say this is sort of something that we've just sort of looked into, as this is not the, we know that the Apple Configurator is not the solution for anything else, like for everything, but this is something to look at. There's a website here that sort of compares some of them and lists others that aren't on this slide. Right, so I'm coming to the end of this slide. Obviously, this is recorded,